Good morning and welcome to Friday Soul Call. I am so glad that you joined us today. And before we get really into the thick of it, what we're going to do is ask you to share. Tell your friends Friday Soul Call is on. And by the way, you can contact us and say, you know what, Dr. Price, I'd like to be one of your soul call guests because everybody has a soul and not everybody has it in control. God bless you. Let's start our study today. This is Alexis. Alexis, greet our audience and tell them what it is you want us to discuss today.
Hello, everyone. So today, to just keep it short and sweet, I want to learn how to accept my call and stop running
Mhm.
away from it.
So let's start with start. What is your call? What has God told you is your call to Him? Whether it's ministry or not, doesn't matter. What
Okay.
is it that He's told you?
So primarily, it's music, playing the piano, singing, and also being a business owner.
hmm So, and you're doing both right now.
I am.
So, where is
Right.
the non-acceptance piece coming in? Help us understand what is it that you're not accepting, and how are you interpreting that?
Well, essentially, before I really got serious and decided to pursue my destiny with the Lord, I had my own destiny all laid out. Okay, so
Probably since 9, right?
yep, exactly. Yes, I was very determined, very focused on becoming a pediatric oncologist and
hmm
doing all these glorious things. So when it
And you
came
have a
to
great degree program that you went through for it.
exactly,
Yeah.
so that's a story for another day because
Yeah, we understand. Trust me.
yes, so
That's the reason to have you back.
and yes. So essentially, my idea was that okay, I do the music thing, I'll do the business thing, and then eventually I would get to those other things that I want to do and had planned for my life. Well, the Lord is like, no,
Mm.
absolutely not.
Now, how do you know that?
It's come up in prayer,
hmm
and he's just been dealing with me about it, even though I try to ignore it.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because a number of our viewers would want to know, how do I know if it's God or if it's second guessing or if it's a spirit, or is it a particular reluctance on my part, like a solical reluctance? So share with them what made you know that emphatically what you thought was your calling and your purpose actually was not the same as the Lord's.
Well, first of all, the things that I was pursuing, it didn't come to me innately or naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I had been singing and learning the piano on and off since I was a very small child, about
Mm-hmm.
5 years old.
Mm.
So it dates back, prehistorically. Music
Mhm.
runs through my family deeply. Business runs through my family deeply. So
Mhm.
it doesn't match up with the history and the genetics.
Mhm.
And then also, like I said, I've toiled with it in my mind, and it's become there's been many people who have brought it up in prayer. So I know
Mhm.
that it's not matching up with what the Lord has for me.
Okay, but you still pursued that to get a degree, even
Correct.
though you ended up not pursuing it after the fact
Exactly.
because it didn't click. Like the whole requirements and standards, is that what made you not pursue the whole medical science that you were stepping out on?
No, I was introduced to your ministry.
Ah, Lord, I promise you.
I was introduced to your ministry, and I was seriously, after I was pursuing my master's at the time,
Mhm.
and so I was getting ready to finish my master's, and I was like, okay, Lord, where do I go next?
Mhm.
I was really trying to follow Him at that point in time. So I met one of your prophets at the time, and found out that where I was taking myself was not where the Lord was wanting me to go.
So I want to go on record to say this is the first time I'm hearing this, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
So I did not derail this woman's
No.
destiny. As a matter of fact, had I heard it, she would have a master's today. You know
I do
why?
have my master's degree.
Yes. So you're done with that.
Yes.
But now we have to figure out how to marry those two.
Exactly.
And I think we can work that out.
Oh,
Probably not
absolutely.
in this broadcast. We'll have you back,
Mhm.
but we can work that out. But yet, even though you knew that wasn't your calling, you're still just as adamant about running from what you feel God has told you. So, what is that adamancy based on?
I think it's based on maybe watching what my father had to go through, and
I needed you
yeah,
to say that. And what did he go through? Share some, because see that whole PK, Minister K, we got the
yeah,
PK and then we
absolutely.
got the Minister K, the
Mhm.
MK,
Yes,
the Minister Kid. Okay. But whatever, church kid, pick
yeah.
something. So talk to us a little bit about that and how that keeps coming up. It keeps erupting every time you get ready to settle into this calling.
Um, well, one of the things is that when I was, learning the piano, and also going through the process of, singing, and I viewed it as, being an entertainer,
Okay.
and partially because my father treated it as such.
You think so?
I think so.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
How did
And
that strike you? Because you said you've been at it since you're 5. When did that hit you?
um, ooh, that was probably in my middle school years.
So you're in your 13, 12, 13,
Probably around 10.
10.
Yeah.
So that, yeah, well, you still in elementary.
And I was, of
Hmm.
course, I was shy, very
Okay.
shy as well.
So at 10 years old, obviously you're a very perceptive woman. So you would have been a very perceptive, very intuitive youngster. Can we agree?
Yes.
I'm concluding God talked to you a lot in dreams and visions as well as in your
Yes.
Bible. I can see that. So 10 years old, you've been studying the piano and singing since you're 5, and something happened at 10 that make you no longer trust your father's fidelity in God, sincerity in God, or purity. Is that right?
Yes.
So can you remember what triggered that? Like, were you in your bedroom? Was it a dream? Were you sitting there watching him on stage? Were you in a lesson? Or did you overhear a conversation?
It could have been overhearing conversation because, of course, as a minister's kid, you see all that goes behind the
Mhm.
closed doors.
Mm.
And so we would travel around with his groups. He had, choirs, he had quartets and groups,
Mhm.
things of that nature. And, I would observe their lifestyle behind the stage or
Mhm.
off the stage, and it just was not adding up.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, so we're just trying to be entertainers here.
Mm.
Well, I don't agree with that. I don't understand it.
Mhm.
So that was one of the main discouragements, I believe.
I think that's a very, very strong and very common discouragement, especially for children. Children, you idolize your parents, you look up to them, and if you're a child who is also very, very sensitive to God, to the Lord, then you kind of put them together. They're kind of one and the same. This is God, this is my dad, and my dad is working for God, and this is how God thinks. And so I could imagine how difficult that was for you. Um, but I would like to know if you were going to, let's say, talk to our audience and say what you felt in that moment. Like, what realization did it hit you? Like, how did it? I mean, were you disappointed? Were you depressed? Were you disgusted? Were you angry? What was that whole follow up emotion that happened there?
Yeah, I think mostly it was disappointment and disgust and confusion.
Hmm.
I was like, I don't want to do this if you're not going to actually live the life that you sing about.
Mm, tough.
So and honestly, it was my dad who exposed me to these things, but it was the people that was a part of the groups that
Hmm.
was the worst of all.
Worst of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can look up to anyone, and
Mhm.
if I'm playing the piano for God, then I want to play for God,
Mhm.
or don't. So
Exactly.
let's go. Have you ever mentioned this to your dad, even without accusing him, but just say, Dad, this was my experience. I need you to help me put this to rest. Have you ever thought of doing that?
I've never articulated that way. I
Hmm.
was just like, I don't want to.
You just right, but see, because you haven't,
Yeah.
then you have already dug in your heels and you've folded your arms on the subject, and I'm just not going to do it. So even though you feel the Lord calling you, tugging your heart, and all of that, when you think of it, there is a sort of revulsion. You're revolted by it. Well, repulsive. Maybe that's a better term. So you're repulsed at the idea of becoming like them.
Absolutely.
So the first thing I would tell you to help you move forward is that you're going to have to, do away with your judgment. Because just because somebody does something wrong doesn't mean it shouldn't be done or that you are not the one called to do it right. That's number one. So the judgment
Yeah.
piece, you're going to have to put that to rest, because as long as you are prejudging, if you're judging everyone else, then you're prejudging God's call on your life. And that also means that there's an element of your own soul distrust. You don't you don't trust yourself to not
Yeah.
fall into that. So, God, what if that's going to be me? Well, I don't want to do that. And so, disobeying your call or ignoring it, despising it, if you will, is very much tied to your own lack of confidence in your integrity, in your righteousness. So I don't want to be that. But what I hear the Holy Ghost saying, would you like to hear?
Yes.
He's saying all of that is a scapegoat for you.
Mm.
You're using that as an excuse to not to give your all to something that you're not quite sure that you want to do anyway. Because if the call was important to you, no one would have to force you to do anything. Everybody has a reason not to, probably more reasons not to serve God than to serve Him, and yet millions do. And they do it not because of mom or dad, not because of preacher and all of that. They do it because they know they are the handiwork of the Almighty. And as His handiwork, they were created for this purpose. And that character, integrity, and all of those kinds of things, those are decisions, and they're decisions based on persuasions. So if you're
Mm.
persuaded that God can keep you, you're persuaded that God is worth the best, if you're persuaded that God deserves your integrity, your righteousness, your fidelity, and your allegiance, if you're persuaded, then nothing stops you. So then you become the brand, you become the model, you become the template, and not the refuser. Do you understand?
I do.
So you in your mind, there's something that you have an issue with God imposing Himself on your life. You don't like it.
Mm.
And you don't like it because you still haven't put to sleep, shut down all of those things that you were going to do pre this moment.
Mhm.
You have to go back and revisit those. And you have to say, you know what? Who am I kidding? I don't know if I would have been successful in that anyway. But it's a fantasy that I'm holding on to. And all of the, because they all end up being facilitators of your present confusion and frustration. So you have to go sit back. What I would tell you to do is go home, pull out of your wonderful little journal, trusty little notebook, and write all of the things that you believe you gave up for this, or you believe God cost you.
Mm.
Write them out, because they're costing. So you're still billing Him for it. You're invoicing Him
My God.
for it. So every time I have to practice, or anytime I have to perform, or anytime I'm expected, and God forbid, don't let Him just interrupt your program and you're making inconvenience. You're billing Him. So I like the word invoice because it ends on voice, and you're still struggling with the voice of God telling you what to do to get in His service. And so and I'll be honest with you, it could be this doesn't always have to be you.
Mhm.
This could also be things you overheard on those bus rides and in those car trips and the van trips, things that you heard, resentments that people expressed that a 10-year-old heard, you know,
Yeah.
irritation and all of those and criticism. So there's a whole lot of soul work, soul cleansing has to happen, because it's the 10-year-old that's still saying, that's working on the vow. I'm not. See, that's why I'm not going to do this. Well, I'm never going to be like that. And if I have to talk about God like that, then so you are that woman, but you are the 10-year-old. The adult wants to do the call, but the 10-year-old is calling the shots. And then in between the 10-year-old and today's woman, there's this whole string of things that you feel like you should have been able to do, and that you had to give up or shut down because of God. So in effect, you're crucifying Him again.
My God.
That's when He said, we crucify again the Lord Jesus Christ. So you're crucifying Him again, especially when one of the things that this present call requires bumps up against the judgment you put on it. So you've judged this. You've already sentenced your ministry to being doomed, because you're not sure God is serious about you. And you really wish He'd leave you alone. I really wish He'd let me just go ahead on and work these fantasies. But do you know you would have been successful? Because Winners are winners no matter what you cause them to do. Doers are doers, the discipline are discipline. So what you have to do is clear that out of your head, clear those out of your imaginations. And we have to start with re- commanding and casting off the spirits that keep them cycling through your soul. Because you picked up a lot as a kid, listening to all of that. So here's how I want to end this with you. You're gonna do this exercise because this God
Yes.
Himself is gonna step up and say, so let me just show you how this was gonna be. I have people to say to me all the time, well, if I wasn't in ministry, I'd have been a star. You wouldn't have been a star because God was not going to lose a star. So if you were called to be a star, that's what you would be, and it would still be ministerial. So, so the point that I want you to realize is that those childhood dreams and hopes and aspirations, well, they're part of helping us become who we're called to be. So that's the first thing you want to know. So you're going to do this. You're going to list it out. I thought I was going to be a singer. I was going to cut X amount of albums. I was going to blah, blah, blah. And I want you to do something that's going to be very, very hard. This is going to be one of the hardest things you ever do. And that is list under there the character about your abilities or your character, your emotional state for doing that. Did you really have what it takes? I mean, would you want to do 5 o'clock in the morning rehearsals? And rehearse from 5 to 9 or 5 to 11 at night? Did you have what it takes? So you can disqualify yourself from that. No, that's not. That wasn't me, or any of the other ones. Really examine your soul, because in the end, only you can heal your soul. We can coach you, we can guide you, we can steer you, but only you, because the truth is in you. You know the truth. So how many balls you've dropped in your life. You know how many things you started and didn't finish. You know all of that. So you want to do that. And then you want to go back to God and say to Him, I need you to lead me and guide me into all truth. Because that's what, you need truth in the inward parts. The whole soul
Yes.
issue is David's prayer. Do I have truth in the inward parts? And is it my truth? Is it social truth, political truth? Is it my God's truth? Because, God's not going to lie. So,
Sure.
did you find this time helpful?
So helpful. I feel like we did a whole excavation.
Ah! And this is just a little
Oh
15
my
minutes.
goodness.
Yes.
Yes.
So we're going to have you back because I'm sure there are other things to deal with. But the number one thing that you want to talk about, God, how you're holding God accountable or responsible for your refusal to obey His call. That's how we're going to end it.
Okay.
Thank you for being with us today,
Thank you,
Alexis.
Dr. Price.
And thank you all. Don't forget, that's the end of another edition of Friday Soul Call. Make sure you go online and share this with your friends and sow a seed. But most importantly, remember, everybody has a soul, but not everybody's in control.